There has been a divide for many years in what some sociologists refer to as the God gap. And Senator Obama at the time, back in 2006, gave a speech on faith and politics where he said Democrats needed to recapture religious ground that they had abandoned to the Republicans. That was 20 years ago. And by most measures, the gap's only gotten wider. So as somebody who seems to chafe against some of the certainty in our politics on both sides and has experienced the humility of faith, how do you think the Democratic Party can do better at drawing religious voters back into its fold? Or what missteps do you look at and think, we need to do better in this area?
So first, look, politics being a human undertaking is obviously at its core a fallen undertaking. I mean, my Presbyterianism is a Calvinist tradition. So, the fundamental depravity of all humanity is sort of one of our foundational, which sounds odd out of context. That's not a way I would introduce myself in a political speech, but we have to be humble about our certainty in drawing conclusions. Some, I think, of my colleagues, they can quote like two scriptures, right? They can talk to you about Matthew 25 and maybe Micah 6:8 if we're lucky, and that's it. First, I think we have to show biblical literacy. I think we have to make connections between why are you fighting for healthcare for the poor and the disabled and the elderly? Why are you working for food programs for children? Like, where's this come from? If you can't articulate some connection between a Torah definition of righteousness that focuses on how you welcome the hungry and the foreigner, the stranger, the orphan, the widow, the imprisoned, if you can't draw a line between sort of here's my priorities and what I'm doing, and it's rooted in the Luke 4 passage where Jesus stands up in his home synagogue and says, this is my ministry and my mission. If you can't draw some of those connections, don't be surprised when religious or theologically serious people sort of doubt the sincerity of your engagement. First, second, and I'm just going to be really blunt about this, the kind of liberal consensus in the Democratic Party of the last couple of years focused on identity and grievance. And I have said this for years, mistakenly viewed Black and brown Americans, folks who are from the Hispanic community, from the African American community, as inalterably and fundamentally progressive because they had experienced racism and racially based oppression for centuries. Missing that enduring that oppression largely was possible because of a focus on faith. And so every Black church I've been to in my home state of Delaware, you've got a really powerful, focused, engaged, on fire community that is getting through things that are hard to get through by leaning on the arms. And so not bringing a message rooted in values and in particular in faith, in connecting with communities that have experienced oppression and have transited it by faith is a huge mistake. And nothing offends and annoys Hispanic and Black communities more than treating them as victims rather than as heroes who have transcended oppression through the depth of their faith.
Does that speak to the inherent challenge of the Democratic Party's coalition? Because it does have, I mean, statistically speaking, Black Americans are the most Orthodox Christians in the country. They attend the church most frequently. They read the scriptures more than anyone else. And they're a solidly Democratic voting bloc. But the coalition of Democratic
I don't know how solidly Democratic a voting bloc they are.
They have been historically. Yes, they've been losing ground.
They have been historically,
yes,
absolutely.
But you have that coalition within the Democratic Party, but then you have a lot of white progressives, highly educated white progressives, who are the least religious Americans in the country.
And as long as they're driving our party, and as long as they're defining our message, we're going to lose more voters. If voters think we are more concerned about Latinx or using terms like justice-involved adolescents or people experiencing homelessness, as long as they think the Democratic Party is an academic lounge fighting over linguistic policing, rather than fighting for opportunity for working class Americans who are struggling to get ahead, they're going to say, And as long as we engage with people in a way that treats them as sort of two-dimensional cutouts, where like we're for you, but we're not with you and we don't hear you and we don't share your journey, we're going to keep losing.
Last question, because I know you need to leave. Can you point to evidence that you think the party is getting that message, that it's trying to adjust, that it will be different in 2026 and 2028?
There are certainly several of us trying very hard in this direction.